What's going on, guys? We've got some news to go over. As many of you know, the Fed did give that rate cut decision yesterday as of this upload, but they also announced something else, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But first off, we have some Bitcoin news. We have 124 pending, not just Bitcoin, but crypto in general, ETFs. Most applying for Bitcoin ETFs, but also XRP, Solana, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Here's a post from Eric Balchunas on X showing these 124 crypto ETFs. We also have baskets, which would include not just one crypto, but multiple, and there are 15 active filings there. And this shows you if they're actually spot ETFs or if they would be derivatives. And this is all coming after the SEC has streamlined the approval process. And while some do say there is a risk to saturating the market, the money will be spread more thin if this is the case. Supporters believe that increased product variety strengthens market structure and supports a broader adoption of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others. And keeping the ETF theme going, spot Bitcoin ETFs recorded their highest daily inflow in 3 weeks with a $223 million inflow. And this came on the day of the Fed meeting, and so far it looks like a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news. The market was overwhelmingly expecting a rate cut, and we were running up to the Fed's decision. We got that rate cut, and things did drop a bit after that. Now, speaking of the Fed, not only did we get a rate cut, and expectations of future cuts are pretty much in line with September, what they gave us. We also have news that the Fed would start buying short-dated bonds to help manage liquidity. They're basically buying treasuries to bring the yield down, which will cause some investors to go from treasuries to stocks. Seeing that the yields are coming down and becoming less attractive, many will think there are better places to park your money. This initial round will total around $40 billion in treasury bills. And the first round of buying will be elevated for a few months. After that, it will be significantly reduced. We knew that this would be coming soon because they announced an into QT, or quantitative tightening, in late October. And yes, when the Fed does buy treasuries, it generally helps stock prices by increasing market liquidity, lowering interest rates, and their purchase basically increases demand for bonds by them purchasing it, which pushes up the prices of these bonds, therefore pushing down their yields. With bond yields depressed, the relative attractiveness of stocks increases and encourages investors to reallocate the funds from safer bonds to the stock market, or reaching for yield. Now, I did want to mention Bitcoin, and yesterday during the Fed's meeting, Bitcoin came right up to this 94,000 area we've talked about, and it got rejected. We haven't been able to clear this 94,000, which is a very important level to break out of. There's on the daily, but going over to the week, you'll see that 94,000 is a clear, important level. Once we broke it, you saw a big reaction, and once we regained it, you also saw a big reaction to the upside. Once we broke it, we saw a pretty big reaction to the downside, and we continue to get rejected at this 94,000. We need to break 94,000 so then we can go up to our 50 MA on the weekly, which I've talked about in previous videos. Right now, sitting at 102,000. As it stands, Bitcoin is still following its uptrend, its ascending channel that it started since November when we crashed down to 91,000 and saw a heavily oversold Bitcoin, which you don't see very often. We are following this ascending channel. Keep an eye on our ascending support. If we can't break 94,000 and soon, we may be breaking this ascending support here shortly and then retesting previous lows, seeing how those hold up. Now, one thing someone mentioned rather than the 50 MA on the weekly was the 50 EMA. They are at different levels. The exponential moving average puts more weight into recent prices, and it isn't just a complete average. But you'll see that last cycle, this is the yellow line, the 50 MA. You could see that basically we got a false read. You had one candle, if my mouse will stop hovering over it, you saw one candle get over the yellow, close above it, and we had basically a false read, and it continued down. And similarly, in the last cycle, we had a candle start basically at the 50 EMA and close out of it, and that was a false read as well. We continued down. For that reason, I think the 50 MA is more important to watch on the weekly rather than the 50 EMA, because you'll see that it got clearly rejected here. There wasn't a false breakout, there wasn't a false read. And same with the last cycle. We broke under it, it found it as resistance, that was it. It didn't give us a candle over it that then broke under. But let me know what indicators, what moving averages you guys are closely watching for Bitcoin. Now, people have been asking about CleanSpark, and it's been in this pretty tight range lately after it bottomed out, similarly to Bitcoin in late November. And while Bitcoin's maybe 5 to 10% up from its lows, CleanSpark's about 60% from its lows as it stands. One thing that CleanSpark is finding resistance on is this roughly 1550 area, or also the 50 MA. In my opinion, we need to break back above the 50 MA. But for now, we're just in this tight range between roughly 1550 and about 14. You'll see that this level, this 1550, was a previous resistance point. So I think it's very important that CleanSpark breaks 1550. One thing that's encouraging is it's just hovering over 50 on the RSI, and our moving averages at the least aren't pointing down. The 200 MA is actually starting to point up. The 50 MA is somewhat flat. But you know, in the end, the Bitcoin miners depend on Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs to break that 94,000 important area, and then it can come and test the 50 MA, in my opinion, sitting at 102,000. If we can get those breakouts, the Bitcoin miners will continue to outperform Bitcoin, as we have seen in recent time after we bottomed out here. But if it doesn't, if it finds that 94,000 again as a resistance, if we break that ascending trend, if we start retesting our lows, I think there's a good chance that CleanSpark can work towards filling its gap here at about $10. I did just notice some recent news that Matt Schultz, their chairman and CEO, acquired 11,500 shares, and then another one where they sold 9,000 shares. I'm gonna look into that and hit you guys with another video going into detail about that and any other recent CleanSpark news. But let me know what other Bitcoin miners you guys are watching. I haven't been watching them too closely, more so watching Bitcoin, because it's going to be the deciding factor if these Bitcoin miners can continue to recover, or if we come back and retest lows. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.